Since it is Pride Month in June, I thought it would be a great time to talk about the importance of being an ally to the LGBTQ community and how it is, in fact, suicide prevention. In today's episode, I sit down with Sharon Downs, a fierce advocate, a community builder, and a quiet revolutionary for a conversation about grief, queer identity, spiritual trauma, and what it means to live authentically in a world that often asks us to shrink. It's a great conversation. It's full of kind insight that only comes from surviving the unspoken and using your voice and your privilege to help lift up others. Welcome to the Suicide Prevention Lady podcast, where we make intervention easy. I'm your host, Dr. Rikki Turner, and I am a suicide intervention expert. Please take note, I am the thinky kind of doctor and not a medical professional, so please do not take anything you hear in this episode as medical advice. All right, today we are here with my good friend and former colleague, Sharon Downs. She is a fierce advocate for the LGBTQ community. She keeps me on the straight and narrow anytime I stray off. So I look at her as the gold standard of being an ally. So honored that she would be here to talk about this. So would you like to introduce yourself and just like how you've gotten into this space?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm gonna keep that on my list of warm and fuzzies when I need something to uplift me. Right? Exactly. I'm just gonna screenshot that. So yeah, I identify as cishet. My name is Sharon Downs. Cishet basically meaning I'm cisgendered. So how I was born and who I know myself to be align as feminine, female, and heterosexual. But I've been an ally to the LGBTQ community for probably about 25 years or so. And it's one of my passions, and it has, the LGBTQ community has affected my life in many very deep and meaningful ways. Mm-hmm. And I come from a background of being in non-affirming spaces when I was growing up in Arkansas. And so I recognize that a lot of spaces are still like that for folks. And so I just kind of see it as one of my jobs to always kind of be there as a buffer as much as possible, and then to help give voice to the people in the LGBTQ plus community. I do work at a local university. I'm here in my personal capacity, and yeah, I'm just excited for the conversation.
Yeah. So how did you get into, like, I identify with what you're saying as far as growing up not in an affirming space and everything. So what can you think of when the moment kind of changed for you, like where your perceptions and what you were taught growing up kind of opened up, where you're like, wait a minute, this might not be correct.
Right. And a lot of that happened for me because I grew up in a Southern Baptist church environment. Which interestingly, my family did not go to church, but my twin sister and I walked to the local church just down the street because all our friends from school went there, and the youth group. And so I got a lot of messages about this kind of stuff growing up that was just not ever really on my radar. I didn't know what it was.
Right.
To be gay. But then in high school, we had a friend who we would hang out with, and he, in hindsight, was clearly gay. I didn't really understand that. But we would go to trackside to go dancing. And I remember he was driving, and we were giving directions and go straight here. And he's like, "Oh, honey, not straight. We go gaily forward." And then I was like, "Yeah, cool." And I don't know. I started thinking about, okay, putting pieces together, because I was a little slow back then, I guess.
Yeah.
But so yeah, and he was just one of my favorite people in the world, and he just kind of knew who he was.
Yeah.
And didn't live in those restrictions. So I guess that was my first time of seeing someone really be true to themselves in the LGBTQ plus community, and have no desire to hide it, and just wanted to live freely.
Yeah. So I don't know if I've told the story on the podcast, but when I also grew up very conservative, didn't know it was conservative, had no idea that the words liberal and conservative even meant, let alone which one I fell into. But I was brought up with deep convictions. And one of those, I mean, told from a very early age, if you're planning on coming home gay, don't come home at all. Like, very much absolutely not, you know, the classic triggering things for this community. But you know, it was Adam and Eve, not Adam and, you know, the typical things, right? And I bought it hook, line, and sinker. So even through high school, I look back on this and I think to myself, what on earth? But at the time, I would not listen to Elton John music because Elton John was gay. Like, that's how they're all going to hell. It just very much went down that line. So I also tell people, if you knew me in high school, no, you didn't. Because I didn't know me in high school, let alone no one else. And so I was just going with what I knew. Yeah. And I got to college and met my now husband, and he got a roommate when he was expecting to have a private room, and he got a roommate one semester instead. And they said, we don't have enough room. You're going to have to get a roommate. And his roommate was gay. And I was like, what are you going to do? And he was like, what do you mean? What am I going to do? And I was like, he's gay. And I'm like saying it like it's some sort of like secret, or like, right, this is profound, you know. And right. Justin is responding with, I'm not. Like, it was no big deal to him whatsoever. And I was like, but like, it's yeah, well, you can't live with a gay person. And he was like, again, I'm not gay. This is not an issue. What are you talking about? You know? And so I was just kind of like trepidatiously going into this. Bless this poor man's soul, who had to deal with this country bumpkin asking him just the most offensive questions. Like, I won't even say them on this podcast. Like, just the most offensive questions. But I didn't know that they were offensive, and I was like genuinely curious.
Something of the vein of, how are you going to keep yourself safe? That kind of stuff.
No, more like, how does it work? How does that work? What do you like? Again, I'll tell you off of the camera. Sorry, folks. That is not something I wish to put on the internet. So, but like, I mean, just asking the most personal and offensive questions that you could. And he did not care. He was just like, oh, well, I mean, you know, and he would just bluntly explain it to me. And I was like, oh, like, it just, and I picture my head cracking open like a walnut, you know, or it was just like, hang on, he's really nice. He's really kind. He's not trying to hit on my husband at all. Because apparently if you're gay, you like every man available. And it was just one of those things where I was just like, I learned so much through that one, like, really immersive experience. And it just blew my brain completely open. And then it was like, wait a minute. And then it just spiraled after that. And like I said, I don't resemble that person at all anymore. And so.
And that's the power of meeting someone in a community that people tend to vilify. Most people who vilify have never actually met someone in that community.
Yeah.
To know them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, turns out I did know people who were gay, just didn't know that they were gay. I was not a safe person to come out to, believe it or not. So it afterwards, you know, it becomes clear. You look back and you're like, oh, well, I should have probably seen that coming. But I like to think that now I'm at least open to hearing, hey, that's not really the nicest way to say that. Or, you know, I would probably get offensive and offended and defensive about it. And be like, well, I didn't mean it like that. And, you know, everything. Yeah. And now it's very much I'm so sorry. Please tell me. Right. Please explain that to me. Can you talk about that? Like, when you're confronted with things, when somebody does call you out for saying something that's homophobic or insensitive in some way?
Well, it's interesting because you said call you out, but I think when people think of call you out, they think of, you're trying to shame me.
Yeah.
In front of everyone.
Yeah.
But very much what happens is people are trying to call you in. They're trying to call you into the circle of trust.
Okay.
And so if you were to say something in front of everyone in a derisive way, that could be calling out. But most of the time you're called in. So if you were to say something that someone in the LGBTQ community found offensive, and they pulled you aside and said, listen,
Yeah.
You said I pass for a woman, and that's hurtful to me because, I am a woman.
Yeah.
Exactly. I am a woman. So when you say that, you're kind of othering me. And I just wanted to let you know that's the effect it has.
Mhm.
And so that's to educate you so that you don't continue doing that to her or to other people.
Mhm.
So calling you into their circle of trust. The easy thing would be just to go, bye girl, and not deal
Right.
with you. But that's I think a real act of love to help someone understand how what they said didn't land the way
Right.
that you intended it to. And that's the whole intention does not equal impact thing.
Yeah.
Your intention in saying, oh, you totally pass as a woman was a compliment. But boy, that's not the impact.
Right.
And so that act of love kind of helps you understand that, so then you won't do that again.
Yeah. And I imagine, like, if you're trying to say something like you pass as a woman or whatever, what you're really meaning is you are beautiful. Like,
Right. Yeah.
You're a beautiful woman, and that's also fine to say. Like, you don't have to get into the weeds about that. Okay. I like the way you said that too, calling them in. That's a much more palatable way to look at it than being called out, because
Mhm.
you never want to be wrong in front of a group, but also I don't want to go out and inflict harm unintentionally either. Like, if I have done something, I want to be called in.
Well, and the thing too is, but you have a level of humility where you can take that information in and do
Mhm.
something with it. Some people just don't.
Right.
Some people are immediately going to put the wall up and say, I can't believe that you think you know better than me what I meant.
Mhm. Right.
So, yeah. So the number one rule in being an ally is humility.
Mhm.
You have got to be humble.
Right.
Because you are going to mess up.
Right.
I tell folks, I've been thinking about this stuff for over a quarter of a century, and I mess up all the time.
Right.
I mess up every day.
Right.
A good day is when I get it right and mess up something. That's a good day because I
Right.
mess it up every day. So, but all you can do then is accept it, try to learn from it, and move on.
Yeah.
But if I say I don't mess up, I'm lying to myself and I'm hurting the community I say I'm an ally to.
Yeah, absolutely. So can we talk about a few things that maybe we can call people in here, of like some common things that are done that are well-meaning but hurtful? Can you think of, to me, misgendering somebody is one that comes up immediately. And it's one that we all mess up on too. And so there's this misconception that if you misgender somebody on accident, because it happens, or if maybe somebody is transitioning and that they've made their identity known, they've come out, or however you would properly say that, and then you've known them your whole life as she, and so you say she, and it's like it's really he, and you're like, oh man, some people will be like, okay, maybe they didn't notice, I'm not going to say anything, they won't say anything, and I'm just going to keep going. And then other people will be like, I am so sorry, and then they'll kind of go a little bit overboard and be like, I'm so sorry, I meant he, I'm getting used to it, whatever.
Right.
Or then some people make it all about them. So can you talk about that specific?
Yeah, and by far, it's the most difficult when we're talking about someone who's transgender, who's transitioned, who you knew before the transition.
Right.
Especially like someone you've known from birth.
Mhm.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
Your brain lays down these grooves that it goes to automatically. And as much as you tell yourself, this is now, this pronoun, and this is now this name, you're going to default.
Yeah.
So all you can do is practice. And then when you mess up, just say, sorry about that. I'm old. Of course I know your pronoun. And then move on.
Yeah.
And again, you will absolutely make a mistake, but it's that acknowledgement that makes all the difference. And some people take the stance of, you know what, I've always known you as this name, and I'm just going to keep using this name, and you're going to have to deal with it. And it's like, thank you for showing me who you are.
Right.
I know now that you're somebody I can't trust. And they won't say that, but
right.
That's what you're saying. Basically, I don't value who you are enough to make this effort.
Right. I'm trying to think of a good analogy, and you may have one ready to go, because I hear that. I mean, especially, I'm from hometown and stuff like that. I hear people say that all the time. Well, that is not their God-given name. That's not how they were born. That's whatever. I'm going to keep calling them by this. Like, it's very stubborn. And I'm like, I just want to ask those people, what is your intended impact with that? What is your intended outcome? What do you think is going to happen? Because if you're thinking they're going to be like, they're just eventually going to get tired of it and be like, oh, all right, I'll go back to my other name. You got me.
Yeah.
That's not how that works. And so, like, the only outcome that's going to happen from that is they will stop speaking to you altogether.
Yeah.
And I'm not in that shoe. I'm not in those shoes. I cannot say for 100% certainty I would want this, but I think I would rather you just say, I think we shouldn't talk anymore, and just exit yourself from my life. If you're not going to, that would be like somebody coming up to, like, you're Sharon, and me and be like, I don't really like Sharon. I think you're going to be Ann. And I just start calling you Ann without any permission from you whatsoever.
Right.
It's not. That's not how this works, you know?
Right, right. And then on top of that, it would be like, I'm not going to call you Sharon, I'm going to call you Robert.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're denying who I am, my existence,
Right.
as I'm presenting myself in the world. You're just negating that.
Right.
I'm not going to let you do that. So yeah, is my relationship with you worth it? Doesn't feel worth it.
Yeah.
All of a sudden.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. I'm not going to go around people that make me feel bad about myself. So,
I mean, I've had in my family, the same situation. You know, my parents came up in a generation where you didn't talk about orientation, much less acknowledge that someone was gay. You just didn't talk about it. It was not talked about.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you can't talk about something, when you can't name it, then there's all these layers of shame.
Yeah.
That are on it, that no one ever has to say this is something shameful, but if everyone around you is not willing to talk about it, that's what it becomes.
Yeah.
So with my parents, we had a family member who came out as bisexual, and they were not accepting at all. And I had conversations with them, and this is what an ally can do. This is my favorite example, because it's a real life example, but it's an example of how, because of the sphere of influence that I have, the people who are around me, I made some concrete decisions about efforts that I was going to make to try to educate folks. You cannot educate folks on an intellectual level on something that is an emotional gut reaction for them.
Yeah.
You can talk about it all day. You're never going to reach them.
Yeah. You have to meet people where they are.
Exactly. So for the situation with my parents, this family member came out as bi, and they were like, not welcome in my house.
Wow.
You may not come back to this house, even to visit, because you're cut out of our life. So I then decided I'm going to go visit with them. And so I had a conversation with them, and I'm kind of the bridge builder.
Yeah, you're the mediator.
I'm the mediator. Yes, INFJ. And so I had a conversation with them, and I said, tell me, when y'all were coming up, what was the attitude around mixed race marriages? Yeah. And they were like, oh, absolutely not. You just didn't do that. Of course not. It's just unheard of. Yeah. And I said, so I have a question for you. The neighbor next door, who you love, white woman, she married a black man. And I said, how do you feel about that mixed race marriage? And they were like, oh, we love him. They're a great couple. Yeah. So yeah. So I'm like, okay, so it feels more normal now, right? Since you have that experience. And they're like, yeah. And I said, how does it feel now, looking back, when you were coming up, about your very strong attitude about how this is always wrong? Yeah. And they were like, well, yeah, I feel differently now because we have this experience. I said, okay, I want you to take that lesson and let's overlay it on top of this lesson. All right. How many bisexual people do you know? Right. This is the look.
Blank canvas.
And I said, now you know one. Yeah. And it's somebody that you love. Right. That, and so let's take that same lesson. You have not had this experience before, but now you have this experience right here in your lap. It's the same person. Yeah. That you've always known. Now you know this new fact. Yeah. And so then it opened up a conversation where then they were like, okay, well, she can come visit, but not with the girlfriend. And then it was like, okay, she can come with a girlfriend, but they can't stay in the house. And then it was like, okay, they can both stay, but they can't sleep in the same bed. And then it was like, we kind of like her more than we like, jokingly. So yeah, but it took like all these breadcrumbs to get them from where they were to, you can never come back here, to where they ended up.
Right.
Then same thing happened with a different family member who came out of trans.
Yeah. Oh, that one's, I don't know why.
It's harder,
but that one is harder for people to get behind.
It's so much harder. But I was so glad that we had this previous experience from a few years prior.
Yeah.
So then I sat down with them and said, okay, remember that conversation we had about a family member who's bisexual and how he ended up being okay with it. Tell me now if you couldn't kind of overlay that lesson. Yeah, but it's different. Because, I mean, how am I supposed to call him by any other name? And how am I supposed to call him or her? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And so it took some work, but we ultimately got there somewhat.
Yeah.
Somewhat.
Yeah.
And so, but again, it took lots and lots and lots of effort.
Yeah.
On my part. And I was the only person that they would listen to on these issues.
Yeah.
Because I'm their daughter.
Right.
They had told my bisexual family member that I was the only one who would ever speak to them again. Everyone else would write them off. And they were wrong. Of course they were.
And can we take a pause for a minute? What a big compliment. I'm sure they didn't mean that as a compliment necessarily.
I took it as a badge of honor.
Yes. Right. Like I would too. I'd be like, that is right.
I
am the only safe one in this family.
Sure. I won't disown you.
You're right.
I don't think that's true, but of course I will not disown. All that to say, everyone on this podcast has spheres of influence.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have a lot of expertise in the area of LGBTQ plus issues, you have a voice, and you have a voice with people who may not be hearing any other affirming voice in this regard at all.
Right.
And so any small thing that you can do can make a huge difference.
Can you give some examples?
Oh man.
Of like small things.
My favorite things to talk about are the passive things that you can do.
Yeah.
So for instance, in my email signature at work, I have my pronouns, and then the she, her links to the Glisten page that explains why people need to explain what their pronouns are. Yeah. So if you want to know more, you can click here and get it.
Have I gotten your email 1,000 times? Yes. Have I ever clicked on that? No. I didn't even know it. Now I'm going to go back and look at it and be like, where does this go?
And I was the first one that I know of at the place where I work who put pronouns in place. And then I started seeing more and more people doing it. And so it feels really good. And I've gotten feedback from students and colleagues of how much it meant to them.
Yeah.
I have, we're not in my office today, but in my office, and I have my background very curated, which, you know me, I love arts and stuff, but I have it very specifically curated to send subliminal messages. So
there's witchcraft in Sharon's office.
So yeah, I put a lot of thought into what goes behind me. So I have some cabinets, and on them I have taped some artwork. One of them is the Safe Zone logo, which has the rainbow. So anyone who's on a Zoom call with me can see just like that. Hang on. Just like that.
There we go.
That I'm an ally. And I have a Black Lives Matter thing back there. I have several things like that. I have a picture of my son and my daughter-in-law, and she's Taiwanese. Several things like that, so that when you look, if you take a minute to look at my background, you understand some things about me that I don't have to say. Right. That I would say if it came up, but in the context of this meeting, it's not going to come up. But at a glance, you can see I'm an ally to the BIPOC community, to the LGBT community, to the Asian community. Right. All of these things.
And that's I will say, for white women in the South, those passive things are so important, because if you see, especially it's one thing if I'm wearing a shirt that has rainbows all over it or something. Like I was wearing a shirt earlier today that got a bunch of hair on it, so I took it off before I came over. But it's like what was it that Kamala said about I'm not intending to be impressive or something. What was that quote? Anyway, it was whatever that quote was that people started like slapping on shirts and stuff. I was wearing that, so like it's one thing if you're wearing that out in public, you're pretty quickly labeled and you start getting nasty looks. But if somebody's just meeting you off of the street, the assumption in the South is, oh, so you hate me.
Not an ally.
Yeah.
Right.
Not an ally automatically just because you're a white woman.
You have to prove otherwise.
Yes.
Because looking at me, you would not guess that I'm an ally to the queer community.
Right.
You just wouldn't.
Right.
And so, yeah, the little things that you can do have a huge difference. And I will say, this is controversial. Well, let me back up and say I'm a Christian, despite my Southern Baptist upbringing. I am a Christian. I do not wear religious jewelry, especially to work.
Yeah.
And I do that quite intentionally.
Yeah.
And the reason is for the queer community, the Bible has been used as a cudgel against them.
It has.
And so for me, wearing a cross may mean love and radical acceptance and peace and inclusion. In the queer community, it could mean to them that all I'm thinking about is Leviticus, whatever, and trying to look for ways to hammer people on the ways that they're not following my moral code.
Right.
Is it a shame? Absolutely, it's a shame.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a shame that I hesitate telling people I'm a Christian, because then I'll kind of want to follow it up with, I'm a Christian, but not that kind of Christian.
Not that.
I'm the good kind.
I'm the Jesus Christian.
I'm the one that follows Jesus.
I'm the red words Christian.
So, yeah. So, and I've had conversations with my staff about this. Like, I'm not going to tell you what you can or can't wear, but be aware that by having this Bible quote up on your wall, someone could interpret that as, she's hostile to me and I cannot be my true self in front of them, which I know is not what you want.
Right.
So we've had those conversations at work. And so, again, the easiest thing for anyone to interpret me as would be someone who was anti-trans, anti-gay.
Right.
Just because of where I live. I'm a person of extreme privilege in everything except for my gender. So yeah, it would be easy to look at me and interpret me as someone who is not inclusive, not welcoming, and doesn't want to hear about your gay stuff.
Right.
And so it's upon me to show the opposite. So if you look on my car when you leave, no doubt.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I always know when I'm behind Sharon.
My husband's like, another bumper sticker?
Yeah.
Like, yes, on the glass. It's okay, I didn't hurt anything. So I do feel like everything I can do to send that message, I absolutely will do. Facebook, even if you're not my friend, you're going to see my profile picture and the cover shot. Almost always something in there with a rainbow or some inclusive message. And I'll tell you, that's how one of my family member who came out as trans came out to me.
It was well before they came out to anybody else, right?
Well before.
Yeah.
And not that I even saw them very often, but because of what I had on Facebook, they knew that I would be open and welcoming for their story.
Right.
And so people say, Facebook, or social media. I don't know what the young kids use these days, but our age we use Facebook. I can't tell you what an impact that had on me.
Yeah. Because
if they'd not come to me, who would they have gone to?
Who would they have gone to? Yeah. Yeah.
And suicidal.
That is okay. And that's
absolutely.
Perfect segue into why we're having this conversation.
The Trevor Project talks about how, I don't remember the exact percentage, something like 47% is the percentage. People, youth who are in the LGBTQ community are something like 47% less likely to attempt suicide if they have one affirming adult in their life. Just
that
one
actually,
person.
That makes sense, because the statistic, and I would have to check, so don't quote me on this statistic, anybody, but last I knew it was 53% of trans people have attempted suicide. 53%, that is astounding to me. And like, when I am thinking back, even to my high school self, who would not befriend anybody who was gay, would not have spoken out in protection of somebody, would not listen to Elton John, for Christ's sake, you know, like very, very staunch beliefs on this. I think back to her and I think if anybody would have asked me, but do they deserve to die because of this?
Yeah.
My answer would have been no.
Of course not.
Like that, I don't know anybody who would be like, yeah, absolutely, they should die. We should just go ahead and put them all to death. I know those people are out there. Thankfully, I know they're not listening to my podcast. So people here are curious and want to do better. And so that's what it ultimately comes down to me. Is you calling them by their dead name going to help keep them alive? Because what you're telling them is that you don't see them for who they are. And that's one more invalidating experience. That's one more message to them that they do not belong in this world. And so knowing that over half of the trans community has attempted suicide at least once, and all it would take for 47% of those is to have one person in their life that they can trust and be safe with.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, listen, people, be that person. Like, just be the person that they're safe with. You do not have to believe that. You can still think in your head that this is wrong and they're misguided or whatever. No one is saying you have to change your beliefs if that isn't important to you. But you don't have to shove it down their throat. You can be a safe space for them. You can just let them be who they are. You can respect their pronouns and their name. Like, these are things you can do that
Absolutely,
that doesn't hurt you at all.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and
sorry.
it keeps people alive.
Yeah.
Like, what small step are you willing to keep somebody alive?
Right.
And what small thing are you doing that could convince someone, yeah, I do not belong in this world?
Yeah.
And I mean, I could not live with that on my conscience.
Yeah.
I couldn't live with that on my conscience at all.
Yeah.
I've worked with so many hundreds of students over the last 25 years. And one of the most impactful things that I have ever done is when we started providing safe zone training at the university. I'm one of the founding members of Safe Zone. And so basically you go through this 4 hours of LGBTQ training on how to be an ally, and then you get this lovely sticker you put on your door. And that's an outward sign to anyone that you have gone through the training and you've agreed to be an ally to the queer community.
Right.
Well, once I stuck that up there, I had a student come in to visit with me on whatever issues. I used to work in the disability office, talk about disability related issues. And they came in and I shut the door and they said, okay, I was going to talk about this other stuff, but I saw your sticker. Can I talk? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that kept happening.
Yeah.
I was in the first cohort. So, you know, they were like, oh my God, this is someone that I can see an outward sign that I can't trust them and I can't touch them. So we've had hundreds of people go through the training over the last 10 years. And I think it's made just a huge difference in folks. And again, they could have had all these allies all along, but how would they know?
How would they know?
You don't know.
Yeah.
And it is so risky, especially today. It's so risky today in this political climate. How are you going to trust being your authentic self and talking about these issues with someone unless you have a visible sign like that?
Right.
Because it feels very dangerous.
Yeah.
It feels very dangerous. And it
is.
It is very dangerous.
It is in fact dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, you know, they say 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but lately it feels like 1 step forward, 3 steps.
Right.
And I'm not even in the community. I can't imagine the pain that folks are in. I know the pain that they're in.
Right.
Every time some BS bill gets passed that directly impacts folks in the queer community.
Right.
I mean, I had a few days in a row where I had gay and trans folks, employees and students, come over and meet me in my office because they needed to cry. And they needed to cry on somebody's shoulder.
Yes. And
I'm so happy that I was there for that. But I'm also so heartbroken
that you have to be.
And it keeps happening. It keeps happening. I had someone message me just yesterday and say, I want to thank you for going to all the trouble to identify where all the single stall restrooms are on campus, because all of a sudden it's an issue.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, you know, get in trouble or get kicked out of school because I walk into a bathroom that someone disagrees with on where I'm supposed to be.
Right.
So yeah, times are hard and they're getting harder. and it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
Allies are needed more now than they were 2 years ago, and they're going to be needed more down the road than they are right now.
Yeah.
So, oh my God, people, if you do nothing else, just think about your sphere of influence and what can you do to make it safer for folks.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say safer, I mean people not wanting to leave prematurely.
Right.
Because they feel like this world is hostile to
Right.
them.
Right.
I remember when 2020 came, I thought, new decade, what can I do to can I do to be more welcoming and inclusive? And I actually got online and I printed this sign and it said Free Mom Hugs. That's an organization.
Love it.
Free Mom Hugs. Taped it on my door. I thought someone's not gonna like this, but maybe tell me to take it down, but nobody did. And then the pandemic hit and I'm like,
yeah. It's a nice thought. That lasted for what, 2.5 months?
Free Mom, all of them.
Free Mom waves from across the room. 6 feet away, please.
It was unfortunate timing, but but I all jokes aside, I am known for if you need a hug, I'm down for it.
That spoiler alert, I've showed up at her house for a hug before. So
yeah, I just it's life to me.
Yeah.
To give them and to receive them. But and again, I've had so many people just come and just need to cry on my shoulder.
Yeah.
And I'm beyond honored that they trust me for that and that they want me for that. But
right.
They should have a plethora of folks to go to.
Yeah.
I guess my big point that I want to say is in all of this, Desmond Tutu has this great quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but basically, anyone who is neutral is on the side of the oppressor.
Yeah.
So if you just say, LGBTQ stuff doesn't affect me, I'm just gonna, I don't need to come out as supportive or anything. I can just be not comment on it. You are on the side of the oppressor.
Right.
You're basically sending the message that you're not important enough for me to learn about you, learn about your community, and find ways to support you and to be an ally to keep you alive in this world.
Right.
We all have skin in this game.
Yeah.
Guess what? Gay people.
Oh yeah.
Guess what? Trans people. You may not know that you know them,
but you do.
But you 100% do.
Yeah.
And they see you. They see what you're doing. They see what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And they're taking those messages to heart. Mm-hmm. So is it going to be for the good or for the bad?
Right. 100%. A couple of things that kind of came up as you were doing that. Number one, I also I have not curated my background the way that you have, which has given me the idea though, because I'm going into a new role where I will be in the office 5 days a week and I will be meeting with students and stuff. So I will be placing those things in my office just to make sure that everybody knows, hey, I'm a safe person. We're going to get you through it. One thing that I do at work now as just a subtle sign of protest, and it's just a subtle sign of, it's just one of those, what is it? They call it micro acts of feminism and stuff, I
can't wait to hear what you're about to say.
I know she's leaning in. My office, there's not women's bathroom stalls and men's bathroom stalls. There's 2 single stalls, but they are still labeled man's and woman's, and they're right beside each other. And every chance I get, I go into the men's just to do it.
Yeah.
Just to see the faces, just to ruffle feathers. But I'm just until we change these to just gender neutral bathrooms, why does it matter? This is a single stall. I don't understand, because to me, just let them be bathrooms and let people go to the bathroom that they want to, whichever one's free. I just want the least amount of wait time. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't care if there's a man in there or not. I understand that's my comfort level and that's not everybody's comfort level. In the single stalls, can we just drop it, please? It's the simplest little thing. Because there are people that will not go in the men's bathroom. I guess they think there's cooties in there and stuff. And I'm like, no. So anyway, that's one thing that I just do just to irritate people, honestly.
Did I ever tell you about the first time I used an all-gender multi-stall restroom?
Was it at a conference?
Yes.
Okay, tell the story though, because it is a good story.
So I'm at a conference, and it was, if I remember, it was probably Time to Thrive, which is Human Rights Campaign's conference. And so, of course, all of the multi-stall restrooms in the conference center, they taped a sign that says all gender, all gender. So I tell people, you won't believe what happened to me. Oh my God. So I walk in the stall, I walk in the bathroom, and there's a man there washing his hands, and he goes, "Sup?" I'm like, "Sup?" And I went in the stall and I peed. And that's it.
And then, yeah, people are always like, well, then what happened? You're like, then I washed my hands and left. And like, it's not this thing that you're making it to be.
I was built up. You know, I believe what just happened.
Yeah.
So it was such a non-event.
Yeah.
And I just thought, why can't it all be like this? Why does everybody have to make such a big deal about it?
Right. I'm of the same mind. And here's the thing. I don't want to take anybody's experience away. If you had, like, I know people have been assaulted in bathrooms. I know there have been cameras installed to do voyeurism in bathrooms, and some people find out about it. And like there's an immense amount of hurt that comes with that. But I need us to realize, claim, make it known, make it public. Most of those, if not all of those, were not committed by trans people.
Mm-hmm.
They might have been committed on trans people. But the trans community were not the perpetrators in those scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
So can we stop? It's kind of like the drag queen issue where it's like, the drag queens are teaching our kids all these things. And I'm just like, show me a list of drag queens committed to child sex crimes, and then show me the preachers. And then tell me again, which ones are the problem.
Yeah. And
yet I'm not going around saying all preachers are bad either. You know,
yeah, I saw a video of someone saying, you know, those drag queens, they only want to read to children. Why children? And it's like,
because adults won't sit still.
Like, because adults know how to read. And children need to be read too. Yeah.
Because all the research shows that the youth of America thrive better when they're read to. Mainly, that's why, like, if they would let me come in and read to the congressman, I would be first in line.
So apparently they need to, because they're not reading the things they're voting on.
Right.
Sorry. You can cut that up. We're not going to give shit. So yeah, we vilify what we don't understand.
Right.
But most people who vilify things they don't understand that that's what they're doing.
Right.
They're just going on their guts.
Right.
And they've been told their whole life that this population is bad and evil, and they're gonna take your children and and they're going based on complete ignorance. How do you fight ignorance? Again, you can't educate them out of their gut feelings. Right. But if you know somebody, right, and you can have that relationship and have conversations, mm-hmm, and encourage people to learn, watch a documentary, read a book. I'm reading that book there called Whipping Girl, mm-hmm, and expand your horizons beyond what's right in front of your face. Right. And that's hard to do in the rural South, where a lot of people have very small worlds, right, in which they live. Right. You know, you're born in this town, you stay in this town, you don't meet people, yeah, you don't go to college, your worldview is very constricted. But if you are not part of that population, if you have grown in some way in the world and have learned things, talk to people who don't have that opportunity or who have never took that opportunity, right, and help live that experience for them. Right. Like in my family, when Barack Obama was elected, I'm the only Democrat, mm-hmm, in my whole family of origin. Right. My brother's libertarian, but that's another story. Everybody else is all in for the Reds. When Barack Obama was elected, we had a family gathering. It was probably Thanksgiving, and someone said, "Oh, Barack Hussein Obama," and I just thought, I'm not going to fight with everyone, but I'm not going to be quiet. Right. So roll over either. So yeah. So I said, Hussein, that means beautiful one. Isn't that a lovely? Yeah. Isn't that a lovely name? And they're like, oh, Sharon. Again, I'm not going to push back. That's his name, but it's right, like, it's a name. Just because you're Hussein doesn't mean you're a bad guy, because there is a prominent bad guy right now by the name of Hussein. So it's all stupid. But again, people live in their tiny little worlds, and they need us to come and shed light on it, in a loving way when we can. Yeah. So that leads me to, I guess, my final question, I guess. What is your, like, to somebody who is listening, who is like, dang, I feel a little bit called out right now. I know I've realized there's some things that I've done that I need to kind of reevaluate, or maybe not. Maybe they're already doing great, but they're like, I just want to be a better ally. How can I be a better ally? So like, what would your advice be for somebody
just wants to do better?
Well, I think the primary thing you can do is to assess your level of knowledge about the community that you're claiming to be an ally with or to. Assess your knowledge. And if your only knowledge is watching Will and Grace, that's okay. You need to do more.
Right.
Right. So again, meeting people in the community, watching documentaries, reading books, making friends who are strong allies and picking their brains. I will say that if you have friends who are in the LGBTQ community, certainly having conversations with them on getting their advice is very helpful. But I would also caution folks not to just keep going back at the LGBTQ community to ask them to help you be a better ally, because that's putting a lot of work and emotional load on them when they're just trying to live their life. You know, they were not put on this earth to educate you on how to be a good ally to them.
Right.
Again, if you have someone who's a friend and you have questions, that's totally fine. But take some initiative. There's so much information out there that you can access. Human Rights Campaign has a ton of information. The Trevor Project in terms of young LGBTQ folks and suicide prevention, tons of information. So take some initiative, learn things. Go to Pride, for goodness sake. It's so much fun.
It is fun.
It is so much fun, and you get to dress up and be silly and meet people and show your face as an ally and buy some swag. Have a sticker and put it on your laptop. But probably the biggest thing you can do is to stay humble and to always think, you know, I'm not the expert. I mean, I've been doing this, like I said, for 25 years, and people say, "Oh, she's an expert," and I'm like, no, don't say that word. No.
Note to self: don't put that in the intro.
How could I ever?
Because I would, like, I would say Sharon Downs is an expert in being an ally. That's what I would say.
No, I do not claim that word. I think you can be an expert in things that you like. For sure, if you are in a field of study and do research and all of that, you know, like you've done with your doctorate and all that, call yourself an expert, absolutely. This, to me, feels a little bit different because, like, I got my degree in counseling. Right. I didn't go into counseling. I use my counseling skills all the time, but I didn't go into counseling. So I use counseling skills. I understand it. If I were a full-time counselor, at some point I may, you know, call myself an expert in counseling theory or whatever.
Sure.
I don't know. To me, this is just being a good human 101.
Okay.
And
I could say you're an expert in being a good human.
Well, okay. I guess what I'm saying is, how can I be an expert in? I will never understand the lived experience of anyone who's queer. I just won't. I can get, you know, adjacent to that experience, and understand what I can, and I know how I can be a good ally among folks. But there are probably 1,000 ways to be an ally that it hasn't even occurred to me. Because it hasn't come up in my sphere, and so I guess the humility is the most important part, because you will continually be faced with situations where you don't know what to do. You don't know how to be a good ally. And you've just got to, anything in you that says, I know exactly what to do, I'm going to do blah, 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 you know, you really need to check yourself. Because maybe that's your ego talking and not the best interests of the LGBTQ population that's front of mind. Your first thought needs to be, how is this going to impact my friends who are queer? And what action can I take that will benefit them and not cause harm? I may not know what that is. I may have to ask some questions. I may have to do some reading. I may have to pray about it. And so I think maybe that's why I'm not comfortable with the term.
That's fine.
Expert. I wrestle with that. Again, I also have, and you know this, imposter syndrome. In everything that I do. But primarily, I did for a long time in this area, because it's like, why am I the face of LGBTQ inclusion in my spheres of circle when I'm not in that community? But then I had some folks who were in the community say that they needed me to be in that role because I am in rooms where they're not. And I have influence on maybe policy levels, that they do not. And so I've learned to embrace that, but then also understand my positionality.
Yeah.
Of being, my favorite phrase is to try to be, see if I get this right. I want to be I don't want to be the sage on the stage. I want to be the guide on the side.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that's my role, is to try to be the guide on the side and give voice to people who are in the queer community,
Yeah.
and to be their voice when that's what they want and need.
I echo that sentiment, because I feel like we are not members of the community that is affected by this. We're not. And Lord, if I could choose, I don't know that I would have chosen straight. I'll tell you that. I think I like women in general a lot better, but I'm just not attracted to them. Like it's not a choice. We are, for the most part, in the positions of power, and being an ally means using that power to fight for those who don't have it.
Yeah.
Using our privilege to fight for those who don't have it. And so when people are like, yeah, but I'm not a part of that community, this doesn't really affect me, this is not my fight, that's your sign it is in fact your fight.
Yeah, you're missing the whole point.
You're missing the whole point. And that's okay. But think of it this way. It's the same when we're talking about our friends who are minorities and everything. They need the people who have the inherent power to speak up, because that's where the change is made. Otherwise, can they get it accomplished? Maybe. That is a much longer and harder road for them to fight it alone, versus if we step in and be like, actually, let me help you across this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the analogy of the person who's stuck in the hole.
Yeah.
They don't need somebody yelling down, like, that's too bad. Really hate that for you. I'll be here when you're done.
Yeah.
They need somebody who's willing to put the ladder down and go down into the hole with them and help them get out. And so that's what we're the ones with the ladder.
Yeah.
So, okay. So thank you so much for just the conversation, the openness. I mean, I'm sure everybody's fallen in love with you like everybody does. So if they want to have you maybe do a workshop for their school or their workplace or something like that, just to bring in maybe Safe Zone or something similar, just a diversity or awareness training, how can they get a hold of you? How can they contact you for that?
Yeah, I would love that. There are a couple of ways. One is, I work for a side gig of mine is I work for Just Communities of Arkansas, and Just Communities, JCA does trainings on multiple topics. This is one of them. A lot of DEI, a lot of inclusion in the workplace, LGBTQ inclusion, disability, race issues. I mean, tons of stuff like that. So justcommunities.org is the website, and then also people can contact me individually. Probably the best way would be my email, which is sadowns, SADOWNS @gmail.com.
Okay.
And I'd love to have a conversation with you.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just sharing resources, and if you want to develop something more like a training, I love doing that stuff.
Yeah.
I live to do.
Right.
Like that.
And she's good virtually and in person. So the world is your oyster with this. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you doing this.
My pleasure.
Taking time to sit down.
My dear friend.
Were you inspired by Sharon's story? If you were, I would love for you to do one thing this week to create space for someone who might feel like they don't belong. That can mean asking someone how they really are, advocating for LGBTQ plus inclusion at work, or just telling someone, you matter and I see you. Small gestures can really disrupt shame in powerful ways and make people feel welcome and like they belong. It is absolutely suicide prevention. If you enjoyed this episode, if it challenged you or gave you something to think about, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a review, follow the podcast, share it on social media with a takeaway that resonated. It helps us find our way to more people that could be agents of change and innovative ways to be kind and intervene with suicide. Now, next week's episode, it will drop on July 1st, but it is still addressing issues that are important in June. I sit down with Dr. Ariane Barlow Rollins, and we talk about the importance of Juneteenth and what it means to be an ally to the Black community as well. It is a very real and raw conversation, and I think you're going to really enjoy it and hopefully come out with some more insights into what it means to be in a marginalized community in the United States. So join us next week where we continue to learn how to intervene with ease.